For more than 200 years, there was a place in the heart of old Tokyo that appeared on no honest map and lived in no polite conversation. It was surrounded by a wall, ringed by a black moat, and reachable through a single narrow gate. Once you walked in, the world you knew stayed outside. The place was called Yoshiwara. To the men who came at dusk, it was a glittering city of pleasure, music, and light. To the women trapped inside, it was something closer to a beautiful prison you left only as a corpse. By day it slept. By night it burned with lantern light, and the narrow streets filled with silk, perfume, and the sound of stringed instruments drifting down from the upper windows. Behind those windows sat the women. They were displayed in wooden cages that faced the street, kneeling perfectly still in layered kimono, so that passing men could study them and choose. They were called caged birds, and everyone understood exactly what that meant. Most of them had never chosen to be there. They were daughters of the poor, sold by their own families for a handful of coins when a harvest failed or a debt came due. A girl might arrive at 7 or 8 years old and be told this was her home now. The youngest were raised inside the walls as servants, learning to pour tea, to write poems, to play music, to smile on command. They grew up watching the older women and slowly understanding the future that was already waiting for them. Every girl arrived carrying a debt. The price her family had been paid was recorded against her name, and she was expected to earn it back. But the house charged her for everything: her food, her clothing, her bedding, her hairpins, her makeup. So the debt almost never shrank. It grew. A woman could work for years and end up owing more than the day she came in. Freedom was always described as possible and almost never allowed to happen. At the very top of this world stood the oiran, the highest-ranking courtesans. They were the celebrities of their age, trained in poetry, calligraphy, and conversation, so admired that men waited weeks and emptied their fortunes just to sit in the same room. When an oiran walked through the district, it was a spectacle. She moved in towering wooden clogs in a slow, deliberate figure-8 step, wrapped in kimono, so heavy she needed attendants just to stay upright. Crowds gathered simply to watch her pass. But beauty in Yoshiwara was a mask stretched over something rotten. The same walls that displayed these women also sealed them in. They could not leave without permission, and permission was rare. Disease moved through the district like a tide. Syphilis was so common it was almost expected, and the treatments of the time, often based on mercury, poisoned the very women they were meant to save. The result was written in the numbers. Many of the women never reached 30. A great many died in their early 20s, worn down by illness, exhaustion, and despair, in a place that had promised them silk and given them a slow death. If you are still with me, take 1 second to subscribe. It genuinely helps these stories reach more people, and there is a great deal about Japan that history has quietly tried to bury. Escape was almost unthinkable. The single gate was watched. The moat around the district had a grim nickname among the women, a place, some said, where those who tried to flee were dragged back, and where the desperate sometimes chose the water instead. A woman who ran and was caught faced punishment, humiliation, and the certainty that her debt would only grow heavier. The message was clear. You did not leave Yoshiwara. Yoshiwara decided when you were finished. And then there was fire. The district was built of wood, packed tight, and lit by countless flames. It burned again and again over the centuries, sometimes killing the very women who were locked inside and could not get out in time. The men who came wrote poems about the beauty of it all. The floating world, they called it, a dream of pleasure suspended above ordinary life. But the dream was built entirely on women who had been sold and who were not allowed to wake up. So what happened to them when they died? These women who had earned fortunes for other people? The answer is one of the darkest details in the whole story, and it is still standing in Tokyo today. When a courtesan died, especially a poor or low-ranking one, the house often wanted nothing more to do with her. There was no family to claim the body. There was no money set aside for a proper funeral. And so the bodies were wrapped in nothing more than a straw mat, carried out through the gate, and taken to a small nearby temple. There they were not so much buried as thrown in. The temple earned a name that says everything. People called it the throwaway temple. Over the years of Yoshiwara's existence, it is believed that more than 20,000 of these women were discarded there. 20,000 names, most of them lost. Girls who had been sold as children, displayed in cages, admired from a distance, and then, at the end, rolled in a mat and left at a temple gate like something the city wanted to forget. That temple still exists in modern Tokyo, tucked among ordinary streets. There is a memorial there for the women of Yoshiwara, a quiet acknowledgement, centuries too late, of the thousands who lived and died behind the wall. Today the district itself is gone. The moat is filled in. Where the great gate once stood, there is now just a bend in an ordinary road, and most people walking through have no idea what the ground beneath them once held. A few old shapes remain if you know where to look. A curve in a street, a weathered marker, the strange way the neighborhood is still laid out. The bones of the caged city are still there, just beneath the surface. And that is what makes Yoshiwara so unsettling. It was not a legend, not a ghost story, not a folktale. It was a real place, run openly, for more than 200 years, in the middle of one of the world's great cities. Thousands of women passed through its single gate as little girls and never truly walked back out. They were called caged birds, and the cages, we now know, were not just a figure of speech. So the next time you see the floating world painted as elegance and beauty, remember what it floated on. Remember the mats, the temple, and the 20,000 names the city tried so hard to throw away.